may trading o sa global trading o sa market, nakikita natin at medyo pumapatak na medyo tumaas. And this is average for the week and mag-take effect yan next week.
That was Energy Department Undersecretary Gerardo Erquiza in an interview earlier today. Erquiza says another oil price hike could be expected next week based on movements in the global oil market. The price of diesel shot up by 6 pesos this week and 2 pesos 50 for gasoline. Gas prices in some parts of the country trending dangerously close to 100 pesos per liter.
No established correlation yet, but the MMDA just released data that after the fuel price hikes, there has been a slight dip in the number of vehicles traversing EDSA. There has been a 2.3% slide in vehicle volume from 417,000 units in or before May 5 to 408,000 after June 2. The biggest decrease was seen in PUVs with a 20% drop in the number of PUVs before and after the fuel price hike. Time for today's biggest headlines. I'm Gretchen Ho.
And I'm Robbie Alampay. You're watching The Big Story. More private car owners are ditching their cars to take public transportation as pump prices soar to new highs.
But what greeted them were long lines and not enough PUVs and jeepneys. It's the tail end of the rush hour in EDSA, and we have Mon Gualvez at EDSA MCU Monumento to give us the latest scenes on the ground. Mon, gaano nga ba kahaba ang pila dyan?
Robbie, Gretchen, aside from the long lines of passengers who wanting to ride the EDSA bus carousel for free, many commuters are having a hard time right now to ride or to take other public utility vehicles here in Monumento. That is because some PUV drivers decided to stop their trips due to the continuous fuel price hike.
This is what commuters in Commonwealth Litex area had to endure every day. They run or walk a long distance just to get a ride. Some had to squeeze themselves inside already filled UV Express units. But the bigger problem is the long wait, with some spending an hour waiting to get a ride.
Sobrang hassle po kasi talaga ngayon pagka lagi po ito eh. Araw-araw po ito lagi ganun. Madalang na po kasi dumadaan dito Pakubaw.
Hirap.
Bakit?
Siyempre, araw-araw kami may trabaho. Minsan, pag Lunes, wala talaga as in.
Some jeepney drivers opted to stop trips as they can no longer afford to fuel up. That's why this garage in Caloocan is now packed with parked jeepneys. They ply the Monumento Malabon route but have since limited their trips to just 4 days a week.
Sa malo ng krudo, tatakbo ka ba ng tatakbo na wala kang pasahero? Di sa krudo lang napunta.
Even Rene, who's been a jeepney driver for 2 decades, was forced to sell his jeepney.
Sa maintenance pa lang, magkano ang pyesa? Pagka nasira ang preno, magkano yung ng preno, yung mga maliliit na item, pag pinagsama-sama mo, ang laki.
Jeepney drivers also have to contend with free carousel rides. In an interview with Radio 5, Manibela National President Marvel Buena said they just want proper consolidation and route rationalization and for the reconsideration of the phase-out of traditional jeepneys.
Robbie, Gretchen, as for LTFRB's part, the agency said that it has opened all routes after the implementation of limited trips due to the quarantine restrictions. And just now, as you have mentioned, the LTFRB also actually approved the 1 peso provisional increase, particularly in the minimum fare for public utility jeepneys. And meanwhile, the MMDA confirmed that they have actually monitored a 2%, more than 2% decrease of the vehicles traversing along EDSA due to the fuel price hike as well. Robbie, Gretchen.
Maraming salamat, Mon. That was Mon Gualvez reporting to us live from EDSA MCU Monumento. How will the LTFRB address public transport woes as a surge in fuel prices are showing no signs of slowing down? That big question and more with LTFRB Executive Director Maria Cristina Casion. Director Casion, welcome po to The Big Story.
Hello, good evening po. Good evening also to all the viewers of this program po.
Magandang gabi po. Diretsoy na po natin. How do we solve this? Sa isang banda, dumadami ang namamasahe, pero sa kabila naman po, kumukonti ang namamasada. How do we solve the situation?
So nakikita po natin talaga po, no, naging malaking impact po talaga yung series of fuel price increases, especially yesterday, yung 6.55 na yata per liter yung additional na fare increase po. That is why no, na the board met earlier today to resolve already the motion for reconsideration of the petitioners po, no, si Juan Utak, Pasang Mazda, Acto, and Altodap po, no, regarding the provisional fare hike, because the board actually recognizes the plight of the Filipino people every time na may increase po, no, and possible effect then on the price of commodities. But of course, we cannot be insensitive. Ramdam po natin we cannot be insensitive to the clamor and plight of the PUP operators ngayon, who are responsible in ensuring the steady of supply of public transport services. Nakikita natin on the ground na kumukonti na po talaga yung namamasada dahil gustuhin man nila, hindi na din nila kakayanin dahil sobrang taas po ng fuel prices po. This is why the board decided tonight, to grant the provisional increase of 1 peso because somehow sa computation ng board, it can actually somehow alleviate po, no, yung nararamdaman po ngayon. Based sa computation po natin, yung halimbawa, on June 3, we had 532,324 po, no, na ridership po natin and with 1,102 units. So that would be a daily average per unit of 483. No? Kapag tinaas po natin ng 1 peso, pag pinagbigyan po natin yung provisional fare na 1 peso ay kikita pa rin sila kahit pa paano ng 483 pesos, no? In addition to the yung base fare po na 9 pesos and the succeeding kilometers po. Given na yung 6.55 per liter would have an effect na halimbawa na lang 5 kilometers per liter yung aabutin po niya. That would be like, for example, tumatakbo siya ng 100 kilometers per day over 5 kilometers. That would be about 20 liters po na makukonsume niya times 6.55 yung in-increase kahapon. That would be a cost of about 130. So kung sa piso pa lang kumita siya ng 483, so most probably ay matutulungan natin siya doon sa in-increase po kahapon. So minabuti ng board na pagbigyan na yung kahilingan ng mga petitioners na i-increase na yung provisional fare po.
Director Casyon, di rin naman po tayo magugulat when the organization say na hindi pa rin sapat ang piso. Pero iwan muna natin yung fare hike. Maliban po sa fare hike, ano pa pong ibang pwedeng assistance sa mga driver at operator?
Right now po, we are continuing with the service contracting program natin in which tinaasan nga natin this year yung rate po natin. And the fuel subsidy din po, no, na we are targeting na ma-complete na din po this week yung ating kabuuang targets. And once we complete that, we will be requesting once again the TBM for the second tranche na po. Na according to DOTR, it would be 5 billion. So tinatansya natin po na by end of June or early January ay maipamamahagi na din po natin itong fuel subsidy dahil wala naman na tayong ibang gagawin kung hindi lagyan na lang ng pondo dahil may mga cards naman po lahat ng mga beneficiaries.
Okay, maraming salamat po. Maria Cristina Casyon is Executive Director of the LTFRB. Aside from rising crude costs, prices of prime necessities and basic commodities are also starting to rise. Gretchen gives us a rundown of some of the new prices.
Staggering increases here, Robbie, as some vegetables even saw a 100% increase in prices. That's the case in NEPA Qmart, where from 50 pesos, a kilo of onion now costs 80 to 120 pesos. Langka is also more expensive by 5 to 15 pesos per kilo. Siling labuyo by 150 pesos, ampalaya by 75 pesos, and eggplant by 40 to 60 pesos per kilo. Huge increases as well for garlic, beans, and cabbage, and many other fresh goods. Meanwhile, a kilo of chicken now ranges from 180 to 200 pesos from just 150 peso per kilo price previously. A kilo of frozen pork also increased by 25 pesos, while fresh pork is still at 350 pesos per kilo. Other products such as sardines and evaporated milk also increased its cost by up to 3 pesos per can, while a kilo of sugar went up by 4 to 5 pesos per kilo. These are the other big stories tonight. President-elect Ferdinand Marcos Jr. has confirmed his attendance to the Thailand Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit in November. Meanwhile, the Quezon City Council is not letting this parody slide. Comedian delas and director Darryl Yap have been declared persona non grata for disrespecting the city's official seal in a campaign video. And Ateneo's SJ Belangel forgoes his last 2 years with the Blue Eagles to join the Korean Basketball League. These big stories after the break.
Still watching The Big Story. I'm Robbie Alampay.
And I'm Gretchen Ho. President-elect Ferdinand Marcos Jr. is set to attend the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit in November to meet other heads of state.
His camp is also ramping up preparations for his inauguration on June 30. Marlene Alcaide has the details.
President-elect Ferdinand Marcos Jr. is off to Thailand in November. He accepted the invitation of Thailand's Chargé d'Affaires, Thawat Sumitmo, to attend the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation or APEC Summit. The ambassador visited Marcos Jr. last Monday. The annual summit will be also conducted in person, the first in 4 years. Recall that the 2019 summit in Chile was cancelled due to protests, while the event in the past 2 years were held virtually due to the COVID-19 pandemic. This is going to be Marcos Jr.'s first meeting with other heads of state as Philippine president. APEC's primary purpose is to promote sustainable economic growth, trade, and investment in the Asia-Pacific region. And while APEC is still months away, the inauguration of Marcos Jr. is happening in 3 weeks. Designation areas will be put up for those who want to witness the event. Police also has a reminder to the public.
We will adopt the same standard protocols pagka yung may mga major event kami. Kasi maglalagay kami doon ng mga marshals, maglalagay kami ng mga mga checkers. So para mas mapabilis, huwag na lang silang magdala ng bag na hirap sa yung zipper o yung kung meron man silang baon na tubig, yung mga transparent na plastic na backpack, pwede rin yan. Manunod ka lang naman.
Road closures and rerouting will be announced days before the inauguration. But the PNP says that the street in front of National Museum along P. Burgos will be definitely closed. As for protesters, they will only be allowed at freedom parks such as Liwasang Bonifacio. For News 5, Marlene Alcaide, we are One News.
Meanwhile, some candidates from the recently concluded national and local polls rushed to file their statements of contributions and expenditures, or SOSE. The filing ends today. Vice President-elect Sara Duterte SOSE declared 216.1 million pesos worth of in-kind contributions from different sources and her party Lakas CMD. This is also the amount of her expenditures. Presidential candidate Manny Pacquiao, meanwhile, spent more than 119 million for his campaign. 62.6 million came from his own pocket, and the rest were donations. President-elect Ferdinand Marcos Jr. filed his SOSE yesterday. He had declared 272 million pesos worth of expenditures for his presidential campaign. Presidential candidate and outgoing Vice President Leni Robredo also filed her SOSE on Tuesday, as well as outgoing Manila City Mayor Isko Moreno. Vice presidential candidates Atienza, Soto, Pangilinan, and Belo have also declared their expenditures. Meanwhile, those who will fail to file their SOSEs on time will be given a notice of compliance by the COC. Winning candidates could still comply within 6 months from proclamation dates, but they will also be paying a fine ranging from 6,000 to 10,000 pesos. Candidates will not be allowed to take office without submitting their SOSEs. Other candidates who fail to file, meanwhile, will have a record of failure to file in COMELEC.
For the big story in sports, from Katipunan to South Korea. Ateneo Blue Eagles guard SJ Belangel is set to forgo his 2 playing years in the UAAP to become the first Pinoy import in the Korean Basketball League. More on his decision to turn pro in my report.
They get it inbound. Belangel pump fakes, puts it up. Oh baby! Oh baby! We're going to FIBA Asian Cup!
A shot that will be remembered in Delas history has also become the path for even greater success for SJ Belangel. His dagger 3 in the FIBA Asia Cup qualifiers gave the Philippines its first win against the Koreans since 2013. And that moment also made a mark in the minds of our arch rivals. SJ is set to become the first ever Pinoy import to play in the Korean Basketball League.
When you talk about Korea, unselfish basketball agad yan, tapos the way they shoot. So for me, it's a tough league, but sabi ko nga, it's when the going goes tough, dun talaga makikita kapag kung saan yung caliber ng isang basketball player.
Belangel for 3. Yes, sir!
Belangel helped lead Ateneo to 2 championships. And despite having 2 playing years left, the graduating AB Interdisciplinary Studies major has decided to move on to the next chapter. He inked a 2-year contract with KBL's 5th-ranking team, Daegu KOGAS Pegasus, which finished the 2021-2022 season with a 27-27 record.
Actually, madami ding offer sa akin like Japan, Taiwan, other Korean teams.
Bakit ito yung team na napili mo?
The way I play, it's similar daw sa coaches namin tapos sa kanya. So, I'm gonna be the right fit daw para sa team nila.
In a twist of fate, SJ will also be playing alongside South Korea's starting guard Kim Nak-hyun, who also played in the 2021 FIBA Asia qualifiers. But it's going to be a long wait as Kim is still in mandatory military service until November 2023. But the question is playing in the PBA already out of the picture?
Sabi ko na someday, makakalaro din ako dito sa PBA. So, one thing's for sure, in the future, lalaro ako sa PBA.
But even as he plays abroad, SJ still will not let go of his national team duties. SJ is set to play in the FIBA Asia window this coming June 30 and July 3 and will be flying to Korea with his family after graduation and August. Gretchen Ho, We Are One News. Time for another quick break. More of the big stories when we return.
You're still watching The Big Story. I'm Robbie Alampay.
And I'm Gretchen Hall. In order to address the supply gap in some basic commodities, the incoming Trade Secretary is looking at establishing ties with other possible trading partners.
He's also open to adding more products in the list of goods included in the suggested retail price list. Shaila Francisco with this report.
As the war in Ukraine drags on, its effect is felt more and more in economies around the world, including the Philippines, from soaring prices of oil to lack in supply of some goods. To plug the gap when it comes to the supply of some items, incoming Trade Secretary Alfredo Pascual says it's high time to look for more trading partners.
We need to scan the market, and see whether there are friendly nations that we can approach, or even nations we have not dealt with before, but have the supply. We need to be resilient ourselves by being resourceful.
But it's not just consumers who are hurting with high prices of commodities. Manufacturers are also now asking for price hikes. Pascual says such requests will be evaluated. He is also open to reviewing whether to include more products under the suggested retail price lists. For now, he advises both consumers and manufacturers to look for substitutes to expensive inputs and products.
And let the market competition take care of issues like what you're saying. Do we need to include the small retailers, sari-sari stores? Maybe we don't need to, as long as there are alternatives to consumers to buy products from outlets that are observing the suggested retail prices.
With the economy taking a double beating, first from the pandemic and now the war in Ukraine, Pascual says it's high time to focus on one of the economy's bloodlife, the medium, small, and micro enterprises. This includes providing working capital, tapping the SB Corporation for financing, and the use of technology.
Expand their market by integrating them into the e-commerce platforms, either existing or platforms that we will develop specifically for the small enterprises.
He also wants to help boost employment, first by strengthening the BPO sector through further training with state institutions, as well as modernizing manufacturing and agriculture to further attract a younger workforce. Shaila Francisco, We Are One News.
Sa lahat ng mga reklamador sa QC, babala! Asawa ni Babalu.
Comedy queen Ay delas starred in this video released last April in Darryl Yap's Vincentiments page. The 2-minute political skit, however, earned the ire of the Quezon City Council, which declared them persona non grata. Apart from the apparent impersonation of Mayor Joy Belmonte, the video also showed the Quezon City seal with the text BBM Sara.
Although there is no local ordinance banning, saying specifically na wag mong gagamitin. Pero meron tayong Republic Act 8481. Yung parang prescribing the code for the national flag, coat of arms, and other heraldic items na sa Pilipinas na mga bagay na hindi mo dapat binabastos, hindi mo dapat pinapakailaman.
Both Yap and De Las Alas are known to be supporters of the Uni Team. The slate Congressman Mike Defensor ran under in the recently concluded elections. He went against incumbent Mayor Joy Belmonte and lost. Historians, for their part, said tampering and vandalizing an official seal shows utter disrespect for the city and its residents.
Yung seal ay nagiging simbolo ng lungsod mismo. So nilalagay mo usually sa seal yung mga bagay na mahalaga para sa lungsod.
But a lawyer explains that the two can still travel to QC despite the persona non grata declaration.
Except symbolically nga lang. So, Ms. Ay delas cannot be evicted from her property or residence in Quezon City. She can still travel there.
QC Councilor Ivy Lagman now wants an apology from the two. For his part, Yap said Lagman overreacted and is just being immature. The comedy queen, meanwhile, has yet to respond on the issue. For News 5, Laila Pangilinan, We Are One News.
Buti na lang, walang ban sa QC. Naisip ko lang, no? Paano ka magte-travel sa metro kung iiwasan mo yung Quezon City? Parang ang layo ng... Mahal pa naman ang gas ngayon.
Oo nga, lalo pang hahaba yung rota mo, di ba?
Pero ang sabi dito, si Darryl, parang nanghahamon pa nga siya na bibili daw siya ng condo sa QC. Because nga parang they clarified na it's not really prohibiting them. But it's the title na persona non grata ka dito.
Totoo naman yun. Yung persona non grata, that is just the Quezon City elders and officials expressing their sentiments. Pero may karapatan naman lahat ng taong magsalita. Satire, of course. This is, you know, ang isa lang dito is ano kayang magiging epekto ng posisyon na ginawa ng Quezon City. Because they will not be the last level of government that will have to contend with satire and humor and free expression. So,
lalo na.
Kuidaw din tayo sa mga kung saan tayo feeling natin whether kampi ka o hindi. Ingat din tayo because that could also be a slippery slope.
At dumarami na yung ganyan, online. Abangan natin yan. That wraps up today's big story. Catch us again tomorrow at 8 p.m. on Signal Channels 8 and 250.
Please like our Facebook page, One News. For more in-depth analysis, visit our webpage, onenews.ph. Mask on.
Wash hands.
And get vaccinated, Philippines. I'm Robbie Alampay.
I'm Gretchen Ho. We are One News. Have a good evening.